welcome everybody to our November Possibility Talk with Rebecca Gonzalez Bartoli, Healing and Self-Advocacy Through Art. My name is Megan Feitz, and I am the Executive Director of Art Possible Ohio. We are the statewide service organization on art and disability. Our Possibility Talk series is a speaker series dedicated to elevating artists and their arts on their creative journeys. And we're so thrilled to have Rebecca with us today. Rebecca has been working with us all week. She joined us on Sunday for a film festival and a panel talkback. She's led 2 artist workshops this week. And she's a wonderful local artist here in Columbus that we're just so proud to know. Before I bring her on, I want to thank our grant sponsors for supporting this event. We are being sponsored by Adam H. Grants Program, the Harry C. Moores Foundation, Ohio Arts Council, the Columbus Foundation, Greater Columbus Arts Council, and the Columbus Metropolitan Library. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Rebecca on, and we're going to get the show going. Rebecca, please come on up, and thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Gonzalez Bartoli. I'm going to be giving a talk today. So my talk is called Healing and Self-Advocacy Through Art. And it's about my recovery journey and how we can use art as an advocacy tool with ourselves and our community. So there are going to be some trigger warnings today. There will be talk of suicide and psychiatric system, but nothing will be in depth. So if you need to step out or turn it off, that's fine. Please feel free to. We want everyone to feel safe. Okay, so I want everyone to imagine breathing in fresh air, breathing out fresh air. Filling your lungs with fresh, beautiful air and clearing your mind. This is what I felt when I went on a 5-week wellness trip earlier this month in October through November. And I'm going to talk about that and how it helped me heal with my art and recovery. So when I was a child, I never thought I'd be in the position I am now. I actually never even thought I would make it to 30, which is a really serious statement, but unfortunately true for a lot of people like me. I struggled with mental health issues my whole life. Ever since I was a child, I was very anxious and had a lot of trouble socializing. When I started hearing voices at age 15, I didn't really know what to do because it seemed like just another thing that was going on. But when I moved to Philadelphia in 2010, that's when my mental illness peaked, and I ended up having a psychotic break. And it was very scary, but my mom came and got me in Philadelphia, and I was put in a hospital for an extended stay, and they gave me the diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, which was very scary, and it was very daunting because I didn't know anything about it. But also at that point, I was ready to face and to fight. A little background on schizophrenia. I promise it won't be too boring, but 1 in 300 people have schizophrenia or a schizophrenia disorder. That's 28 million people. Schizoaffective affects 0.3% of the population. And only 31.3% of the people get professional help. And unfortunately, 4.9% die by suicide. And schizoaffective, which is a sub-branch of schizophrenia, is a mental illness that includes the symptoms of schizophrenia and a major mood disorder like depression or bipolar. So it's very rare and it's hard to diagnose because you have to be seen with symptoms for 2 weeks without psychotic episodes and then 2 weeks with psychotic episodes. So it's very complicated, and a lot of doctors aren't quick to diagnose it. That's why it took me so long. I was first diagnosed as bipolar as a teenager. But yeah, it's a serious diagnosis, unfortunately. To continue my story, so I was 21 in a hospital, extended stay, and that was heavily medicated. That's the psychiatric system, unfortunately. It was devastating diagnosis, but I remember my doctor telling me, you will have 60% functionality after treatment. And I thought, wow, years and years of treatment, I'm going to be at 60%. And I kind of was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're gonna fight. And so at 21, which is 11 years this past July, I started my recovery journey. So what does this all have to do with art? Well, for me, art has always been this little spark inside me, this drive I always had. When I was a little girl, I found solace in art. I lived through some childhood trauma at an early age, but I also experienced watching Bob Ross videos with my grandma, doing art projects with my grandma, and just having art teachers that really wanted me to succeed. In 5th and 6th grade, I really started having symptoms of mental illness, and by middle school, it had gotten even worse. But this was when I started drawing and painting the most. I had a sketchbook with me wherever I went. I would draw on my tests. I would draw on my homework. So they weren't too happy with me about that. But I had a teacher in high school. Her name was Tosca Villano, and she really changed my life. She was a really big supporter of me, which was what I really needed at that time, because I was pretty much failing school. I had an IEP and a 504. I don't know if you know what those are. They are programs for students with disabilities. So basically, when I was missing 100 out of 180 days of school, I wouldn't get in trouble with the law, which was very helpful. But Tosca Villano, she helped me get into art programs that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. She put me to do murals in school. She had me in art club. Like, she was the reason I pretty much passed high school. They were like, okay, we'll let you go with this one. But yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. So when I was in the hospital, I decided to start doing portraits of my fellow patients. So all they had there was magic markers and big pens. So that's what I would draw with. And I have some examples out in the lobby if you want to look of the color Crayola marker and big pen drawings I would do.
You're welcome to take it out.
Okay. Okay, that's better. So mental illness and art, it's widely accepted that mental illness and creativity are linked. That's not necessarily true, recent reports are showing, but creativity also does help anxiety, depression, trauma, and even physical ailments. Art acts as a window to the mind, and it can be an important voice when you feel like you're not able to speak about anything else that's going on in your life. So during this time when I was in Philadelphia and just before I got my diagnosis, my art was very dark, very meticulous, very methodical, very intense. And I have some examples here today. This is a piece I did within about 30 minutes. It just, sometimes art just spills out of you. It's The Mind is Deceitful Above All Things, which is from a movie I was watching at the time. So this was done with marker, crayon, pen and ink, and I think that's it. But this was a really expressive piece for me that just honestly came out without any kind of warning. And then these were from my sketchbook. These are pieces of my sketchbook at the time. And again, very dark and dreary, but also very methodical with the placement of the pen strokes and just how patterns were a big thing for me. This was when I was experiencing psychosis, unfortunately. Patterns was a big thing for me because I felt like I was receiving messages and I needed to find balance in my life by doing repetitive things in order to make everything, okay, even though nothing was really okay. So the psychiatric system I want to talk about a little bit. It can be pretty hostile. It's not a nice place sometimes, but it doesn't want you to have a voice when you're in the system. But having art was my way to fight back against that. It was my way to speak when I felt like I was so silenced by, people who didn't have my best interests at heart. I didn't have people to advocate for me at the time. I was living in a small town in Pennsylvania, and there was no such thing as peer supporters at the time, or, my therapist I saw once every 6 months. It was rough. And that's why it's so important to me now to advocate for others and to be part of the advocacy community. So, after my diagnosis at 21, I decided to try to do art, but it was difficult because I was so medicated that I couldn't really finish anything. So I would start paintings, wouldn't be able to finish them, start projects, and I would just be so zonked out. But I actually started doing my nails. I got really interested in nail art, and I started being really meticulous with my nails. I would change them every week. I would do 3D, jewels and paints and nail polish. I have some examples here of different nails I did. The first one is based actually on schizoaffective. It's an expression of that in nail form. So the nails are about this big. So it's very tiny art. But without that, I wouldn't have been able to be successful in my recovery because it still was, though unconventional, it was still art. And that was important to me. So creative resilience. Once I moved to Columbus in 2016 with my mom, I started to see an uptick in my mental health. Things started to get better. I was on the right medication. I was getting therapy. I felt good. In 2017, I entered my first art show in Columbus at All People's Arts Gallery. It was a show about COVID. And that kind of started it all. I was like, maybe I can do this. And it was really exciting. And it felt like all the pain and tragedy that had happened, where I dreamed my art career would be, it was starting maybe way later, but it was still starting. Because I feel like part of having a severe mental illness is experiencing grief. And once you have that grief, you have to sit with it and you have to accept it, because you grieve a life that you could have had or that you should have had, and you grieve loss of your dreams. But through art, I was able to realize that recovery was not the end of a life, it was the beginning. And after that, my artwork became a lot more colorful, bursts of color. As my mind healed, my art healed, and I started doing very colorful artworks like this. Very colorful. I still absolutely love color and doing everything in color. So I want to talk a little bit about advocacy through art and how stigma affects us and society. Stigma is a mental health condition that can be defined as cognitive or behavioral constructs of stereotypes, prejudice, or discrimination. A lot of big words, but everyone experiences stigma in some way. We all have something that is judged by society. Unfortunately, for people with mental illness, it's pretty much constant. Whether you tell your employer or your friends is a deeply personal choice, and sometimes it can have had bad results just because people don't really understand mental illness in its totality. So with art, you get direct engagement from mentally ill artists to the public, and that reduces stigma because it's a tool for raising awareness. And when you have more direct communication between mentally ill artists and consumers, that opens the board for everyone. So creating accessible spaces is another very deeply thing I'm passionate about. Working with artists can be sometimes a challenge when you have artists with disabilities, but creating accessible spaces is where we can create that change. I'm part of a program with Elizabeth Sammons right now in Columbus, and we recently did the WEX. We went there and reviewed the accessibility features in the WEX. It didn't do too well, but we sent a report, and we're hopefully there will be some changes. And then we're doing the same thing for the Columbus Museum of Art at the end of the month. And it allows for more artists with disability to enter the art world fairly, and not necessarily despite their illness, but because of it. And it's very important to change all that. And also another thing is changing language, inclusive language, I know. But maybe not directing someone as crazy or insane, or, judging people for how scary they look, or, how unconventional they are. Maybe we change that language, and you start with one person, it spreads. If you change your language, the next person that watches you could also have the opportunity to change their language, and it dominoes effects. So advocating for others makes our community stronger. When we lift each other up and attempt to understand our fellow people, the better we heal. Creating art gives us a better understanding of ourselves and others. And I've seen people through workshops or being part of workshops that create art for the first time, or create art even though they're not an artist, and just have immense joy on their faces, experience really just an incredible experience. Because I think art is for everyone. And I know a lot of people, if I asked you to raise your hand if you think you're an artist, how many people would raise their hand? All right, good, yeah, but everyone is an artist in their own way. I think that science is an art, math is an art, making a decision on, your daily life or chores. You always make creative decisions even without realizing it. Once you recognize that life is about creativity, you can tap into it more and maybe find that spark within yourselves to freely express yourselves with art. And self-advocacy changed my life because it made me build confidence in my art. I never thought that I could do the things I am with art. I was unable to go to art school and finish that, and that was a big bummer for me. But I'm finding that I'm making my own way, and that's through believing in myself and believing in my art. This is a piece I've done recently, which was leaps and bounds from anything I could ever imagine me doing. And that was a really powerful moment for me because it made me understand how much growing I still had, because my life wasn't over. There was no end. It's just this blossoming beginning. So back to the beginning, that wellness trip I took to West Virginia, it really was healing. I had a small relapse in September, so I took the wellness trip, and I started doing landscapes, which was very different for me. I hadn't done landscapes maybe one or two before, but it turned into a softer side of me. It tuned into a more just softer and freer part of me. And once again, I was breathing fresh air, I was breathing it in, and I was expressing myself on the canvas the way I wanted to. And that's why I believe art is healing. So recovery is for everyone. I truly believe that. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, where you live. Recovery is possible for everyone. And being an advocate for ourselves and others is the strongest tool we have. Through art and sharing our stories, we can really change society's views and hopefully diminish stigma. And, darkness doesn't have to be forever. Brightness will come. And I hope you've enjoyed my talk. Thank you very much. I had a slide with my email. If you want, I have my email and my link tree attached, so hopefully I'll be able to send that out. But thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry, big noise.
Thank you. Are you still streaming? Are you done, Nikki? I can just thank everybody for coming tonight. I want to thank you all for being here. I'm sure Rebecca's hanging around for a little bit if you have any questions or you want to ask any questions about Art Possible Ohio. And there's lots of yummy food over there that needs to be eaten. I'm certain Rebecca doesn't want to take it back with her. So please help yourself. But thanks for coming out.